Part 1 Extended, the grave that wasn't meant to be. Elias didn't stop walking until the farmhouse came into view. The woman was light in his arms, too light. Every few steps, he felt her shiver, felt the shallow rise and fall of her chest against his coat. The fog wrapped around them, thick and blinding, swallowing the field and the half-dug grave behind them as if it had never existed. Good, he thought grimly. Let it disappear. Behind them, the distant hoofbeats slowed. Elias's pulse hammered in his ears. He forced himself not to run. Running would draw attention. Running would panic her, and panic could kill someone already clinging to life. Stay with me, he murmured, more to himself than to her. We're almost there. Her fingers tightened weakly around his sleeve, as if she feared slipping back into darkness. Her skin burned hot now, feverish, a bad sign. Whatever they had done to her, poison, head trauma, something else, it hadn't finished its work. Yet, the farmhouse door creaked open under his shoulder. Inside, the air smelled of old wood, damp earth, and boiled potatoes from the night before. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. Elias kicked the door shut and slid the bolt home just as the sound of hooves faded somewhere beyond the trees. He stood there for a long moment, holding his breath. Only when silence returned did his knees finally give way. He carried her to the narrow bed in the corner of the main room, the one he rarely used anymore since sleep had become a stranger to him. Gently, awkwardly, he laid her down, tucking the blanket around her shaking form. In the dim light, he could see her more clearly now. She was younger than he'd thought at first glance. Late 20s, maybe early 30s. Her face, though pale and bruised, was striking, high cheekbones, long dark lashes, a mouth that looked like it had once smiled easily. The kind of woman who didn't belong in a coffin in the middle of a farmer's field. Water, she whispered. Elias rushed to the basin, filling a cup with shaking hands. He helped her drink slowly, careful not to let her choke. Each swallow seemed to cost her effort, but some color returned to her lips. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, eyes flicking to the door as if she expected it to burst open at any second. "Clara," she said at last. Clara Whitmore. The name meant nothing to him. But the way she said it, like it carried weight, told him it would. "My husband is Samuel Whitmore," she continued, voice low. "If he finds out I'm alive, he won't stop. Not for you. Not for anyone." Elias swallowed hard. He'd lived his whole life among simple men with simple sins, lying about crop yields, stealing a neighbor's chicken, drinking too much on Sundays. This was different. This was a world of carriages before dawn and men who paid farmers to dig graves without asking questions. "What did you find out?" he asked. Clara's eyes filled, but no tears fell. She seemed beyond crying. "He was moving money," she said. "From the company. From charities. From people who trusted him. When I confronted him, he smiled. He kissed my forehead. And that night, I fell down the stairs." Her hand drifted unconsciously to her temple. "I remember thinking I was dying," she whispered. "Then I remember hearing voices. Someone saying, 'She's gone.' And after that, darkness. I thought I was buried alive in hell." Elias's jaw tightened. Anger rose in him, hot and unfamiliar. "They told me you were dead," he said. Declared. Like it was official. Clean. She gave a bitter laugh that turned into a cough. He helped her sit up, pressing a damp cloth to her forehead. "You shouldn't have said yes," she murmured weakly. "But I'm glad you did." "So am I," he said, surprising himself with how true it felt. Outside, a branch snapped. Both of them froze. Elias moved to the window, peering through a crack in the boards. The fog had thinned slightly, revealing the road. A black carriage stood there now, half hidden by the trees. Two figures were dismounting. "They're here," Clara whispered. Elias's mind raced. He had no weapon worth speaking of, just a rusted axe by the door and his old hunting rifle with one bullet left. The neighbors were miles away. If these men searched the farm, they'd find her within minutes. Unless. He turned to her, lowering his voice. "There's a cellar," he said. "Hidden behind the grain shelves. They don't know about it. My father built it during the drought years." Clara nodded, fear sharpening her focus. "I can walk," she said, though her legs trembled violently when she tried to stand. "You don't have to," Elias said, lifting her again. "I've got you." A knock echoed through the farmhouse. Once. Then again, harder. "Open up," a man called. "We know you're in there." Elias carried Clara to the far wall, sliding the shelf aside just enough to reveal the narrow door behind it. He lowered her into the darkness below, then crouched beside her. "No matter what you hear," he said urgently, "don't make a sound." She grabbed his wrist. "They'll kill you." He met her gaze, steady despite the fear roaring through him. "Maybe. But they won't bury you again." He closed the door and shoved the shelf back into place just as the knocking turned into pounding. Elias opened the farmhouse door. The two men stood there, faces cold, eyes scanning past him into the room. "Morning," one of them said thinly. "We came to check on the job." "It's done," Elias replied, forcing calm into his voice. "Holes filled." The man stepped closer, studying Elias's face as if searching for cracks. "Funny," he said, "because we heard something. A rumor. That the body moved." Elias shrugged. "Dead things don't move." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the man smiled. "We'll see." As they stepped inside, Clara pressed her hand over her mouth in the darkness of the cellar, listening to boots scrape across the floor above her, while Elias stood between her and death, knowing that one wrong word would send them both into the ground. The men moved slowly through the farmhouse, like wolves certain the prey had nowhere left to run. Elias stood near the table, arms loose at his sides, forcing his breathing to stay even. Every instinct screamed at him to grab the axe, to run, to fight, but panic would give him away faster than blood. The taller man circled the room, dragging his fingers across the shelves, the window frame, the bed. His companion lingered near the door, watching Elias instead of the space. "You live alone?" the taller one asked casually. "Always have," Elias replied. "No wife, no children, no luck," Elias said. That part, at least, was true. The man hummed, then bent to inspect the dirt on the floor near the hearth. Elias felt his stomach drop. He'd tracked mud in when he carried Clara inside. He should have cleaned it. Should have thought. "Funny thing," the man said, crouching. "These footprints go to the back wall." Elias shrugged. "That's where the grain is." The man stood, eyes narrowing. "Move the shelves." The words landed like a hammer. Elias's mind raced. If he refused, they'd force him. If he moved them, Clara was dead. There was no clever answer left, only courage or cowardice. Before he could decide, a sharp sound cut through the room. A horse whinnied outside. Urgent. Startled. The second man stiffened. "Something's wrong." The taller one cursed under his breath. "Stay here," he snapped at Elias. "Don't move." They rushed out the door. Elias didn't hesitate. He bolted to the shelf, shoved it aside, and yanked open the cellar door. "Now," he whispered fiercely. Clara climbed the ladder on shaking legs, fear lending her strength. Elias grabbed her hand, pulling her up just as voices rose outside, angry, sharp, alarmed. "What happened?" One man shouted. "Someone cut the reins," the other answered. "They're spooked." Elias slammed the cellar door shut, shoved the shelf back, and dragged Clara toward the back of the house. "There's a path through the woods," he whispered. "Leads to the river." She nodded, clutching his coat as they slipped out the rear door and vanished into the trees. The fog was thinner now, sunlight bleeding through in pale streaks. Every snap of a twig sounded like a gunshot. Clara stumbled once, nearly falling, but Elias caught her, lifting her again despite the burn in his arms. Behind them, shouts erupted. "They're running." A gun fired. The crack echoed through the woods, sending birds screaming into the sky. Elias veered off the path, plunging deeper into the brush. Branches tore at his face and hands, but he didn't slow. The river appeared ahead, a wide, muddy ribbon swollen from winter melt. "No," Clara breathed. "I can't swim." "You won't have to," Elias said. He waded in without stopping, water biting like ice as it surged around his legs. At the deepest point, it climbed to his chest. He gritted his teeth, pushing forward until the current carried their scent downstream. On the far bank, he collapsed behind a fallen tree, chest heaving. They waited. Minutes passed. Then more. Footsteps approached the river's edge. The men cursed, arguing. They crossed. No, they drowned. Searched downstream. The voices faded. Only then did Elias let himself breathe. Clara's face was white with shock, but her eyes were alive, sharp, determined. "You didn't have to do this," she said quietly. "Yes," Elias replied. "I did." They hid in an abandoned hunter's shack until night fell. Elias built a small fire, fed her what little food he had. Clara slept fitfully, waking from nightmares, her fingers clutching his sleeve each time as if the darkness might bury her again. By morning, news reached the nearby village. A woman had died in a tragic accident. Her burial had already taken place. Grief-stricken husband requests privacy. Samuel Whitmore's face stared out from the broadsheet Elias bought with his last coins. A handsome man. Polished. Respected. A lie printed in ink lasts longer than truth, Clara said bitterly. Elias looked at her then, not as a burden, not as a secret, but as a woman who refused to disappear. They'll never stop, he said. No, she agreed. But neither will I. Over the next days, they moved constantly, barns, sheds, forgotten places. Elias taught her how to disguise herself, how to walk like she belonged nowhere. Clara learned fast. Too fast for someone who had once lived in fine houses and silk dresses. At night, they talked. About his farm. About her childhood. About the lives they'd both lost. Something fragile and dangerous grew between them, not romance yet, but trust forged under threat. Then one evening, Clara said the words that changed everything. I have proof. Elias froze. Proof of what? Of everything, she said. Ledgers. Letters. Names. I hid them before I confronted him. If we can get them to the right people. They'll kill you before that happens, Elias said. They'll kill us anyway, she replied calmly. At least this way, it means something. Elias stared into the fire, realizing the truth. He was no longer just a farmer who'd made a bad choice. He was a man standing between power and exposure. Between a buried lie and a living truth. And once the soil was disturbed, it never settled the same way again.